He managed a brave face, but after a long, drawn-out day, George Entwistle, accompanied by his boss, the chairman of the BBC Trust, Lord Patten, bowed to the inevitable. He publicly ended his 7-week reign as Director General of the BBC.
In light of the fact that the Director General is also the Editor-in-Chief and ultimately responsible for all content, and in light of the unacceptable journalistic standards of the Newsnight film broadcast on Friday 2nd November, I have decided that the honourable thing to do is to step down from the post of Director General.
This is undoubtedly one of the saddest evenings of my public life. George Entwistle has worked for the BBC for 23 years. He exemplifies the finest values of public service broadcasting.
Entwistle, good morning to you. Will you apologise for the ineptitude of Newsnight, sir?
This morning, Mr Entwistle gave interviews to the BBC, attempting to apologise for the Newsnight programme.
What we put out on Newsnight was wrong, and that's absolutely straightforward.
But it seemed to do more harm than good, admitting in a BBC Radio 4 interview with John Humphreys that he knew nothing about the original Newsnight report.
Nobody even mentioned it.
No.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Well, in the light of what's happened here, I wish this had been referred to me, but it wasn't.
When did you find out?
I found out about the film the following day.
The following day? You didn't see it that night when it was broadcast?
No, I was out.
And Mr Entwistle even admitted he hadn't seen a front-page story claiming Newsnight had got it wrong.
Did you read The Guardian's front page yesterday morning?
No, John, I was giving a speech yesterday morning early on.
Aren't some
I didn't see
things
The
rather more
Guardian.
important than others? I mean, do you not have to have a different set of priorities?
But you have to prepare for speeches you have to make, John.
Few were impressed.
At the end of the day, the Director General is the Editor-in-Chief of the BBC. He has to take responsibility. And certainly I think that his credibility and authority have been very damaged by this episode and by the handling of the Jimmy Savile a few weeks ago.
A new crisis for Newsnight. Tonight, this programme apologises.
Last night, Newsnight admitted it had made a mistake, broadcasting a report linking a senior Tory from the Thatcher era with the North Wales child abuse scandal. Although he wasn't named in the original report, Lord Alistair McAlpine was implicated. His name has since been linked to the story on many internet sites. The former Tory Treasurer has already made it clear the allegations are completely false.
The wholly exceptional events of the past few weeks have led me to conclude that the BBC should appoint a new leader.
That leader, for the time being at least, is Tim Davie, who currently works at the corporation. There may be others who are forced to quit because of this scandal, but you don't get much higher than the boss of the BBC. Alex Forrest, ITV News.
George Entwistle is the shortest-serving Director General in the BBC's history, lasting just 54 days. He only took up the job in September, just weeks before the Jimmy Savile sex abuse allegations surfaced on ITV in October. 3 weeks later, he was criticised for his lacklustre appearance before a parliamentary committee. Then, last week, Newsnight broadcast an unsubstantiated accusation of child abuse against a senior Tory. Allegations they had to apologise for last night. Today, after widely criticised performances on both TV and radio, Mr Entwistle resigned at 9:12 this evening. Well, live to our UK editor, Lucy Manning. She's at the BBC and has followed the story from the very start. Lucy, what now for the BBC? Does Mr Entwistle's going end the crisis?
Well, there is no doubt this is a crisis for the BBC and for Mr Entwistle personally. There was just a growing feeling that with two crises engulfing the BBC on his watch, that he had to go. There was the Jimmy Savile story that they didn't run, and then the mistakes and problems after that, and then this Newsnight paedophile investigation that had to be retracted. Inaccurate, shoddy journalism, the chairman called it. The problem for Mr. Entwistle wasn't just that it happened on his watch, it was that he didn't seem to be able to get a grip on everything that was spiralling out of control. The admission on Radio 4 this morning that he hadn't even known the Newsnight piece was going to run, so explosive that it's prompted government inquiries, and that he hadn't then known a few days later that there were problems with the identity of Lord McAlpine. A growing sense that although he seems a decent man, and certainly the dealings I've had with him the last month, the statement I saw him give here was very dignified, that actually he was out of his depth and that he had to go. So this is a big issue for the BBC, and the problem they have is that not only has the Director General gone, but senior news managers can't get involved fully because of the Savile investigation. Newsnight doesn't have an editor. He was Director General for just 54 days. The BBC will recover from this, but this has certainly been a serious blow.